So thank you everybody for joining us today. It's a great honor and privilege for both of us to join you all today. I'd like again to thank Christina for that great introduction. My name is Jaasiel Duarte. I'm a designer at Hermanos Design.
My name is Tayvia Triplett. I am an interior designer at Multi Studio.
We'd like to thank Linda Hall Library for inviting us today, and like Christina mentioned, the AIA American Institute of Architects, the Kansas City chapter, is helping us make this possible today.
So before we jump in and answer the overarching questions, we thought it might be beneficial to talk about what architects and designers do. To put it simply, architects design space using walls, floors, and ceilings. Architects provide the space in which everyday life takes place. So if you look around you, the lighting, the flooring, the furniture, everything that's around you, we have a touch in it, and we're able to help design spaces.
At its best, good architecture solves many different problems. It makes your cities more vibrant, much healthier, and much safer. And a good way to think about it is that architects use design as a tool to solve problems. And most of those problems are defined by the people who use the space or use public space, things like that. And they inform us that they need help solving it. So architects step in and through different various means, come up with solutions to those problems and make a beautiful space.
So architecture is a very unique profession because it allows you to be creative, but also logistical and analytical. It engages different strengths, whatever they may be in this profession. There is room for everyone. The more you get involved, the more likely you are to find your niche. So you don't have to think that, oh, I can't draw, so I can't become an architect. There's so many different things to do to be in this field.
Those are the kind of main three cores of what architects do. Most importantly is they solve problems and help clients sort of achieve their dreams and make beautiful spaces. But now, we'd like to sort of talk about what we do in our profession. It's broad and unique for each of us. Anyone you ask who's an architect, they'll give you different answers. And that there is the core of what makes architecture such a wonderful profession to be a part of. What you see here are sketches and drawings and diagrams that are made early on in the design process. You're sort of what I call in this dream phase where you're conjuring up ideas, you're conveying concepts, and you're just having fun exploring concepts and problems and trying to find a beautiful solution to them. Some, take on more abstract forms, and some take on more literal translations. But it is a pretty artistic phase where you're just having fun and trying to connect different disparate things that a client is thinking about and trying to make it whole through the exploration and drawing. But after this phase, there's a point in time where you start to get to the core of the idea and try to make it more concrete. Part of the architecture profession is that it requires a lot of time management and coordination, meetings, things of that nature that to help get an idea much more developed. So what you see here are sort of some ideas getting much realer, getting a little more in the realm of reality. And then ultimately, the goal through all those exercises is to take the vision and the idea that you have worked hard to produce and that you've introduced to the client. They have fallen in love with it. You then have to sort of work really hard and diligently to get that conveyed accurately and succinctly through what's called construction documents. You can see examples of that here. They look very technical and complex. So imagine where you started with a really loose, beautiful sketch, now into this phase of a very technical thing, because you're trying to convey to a builder to actually make the vision reality. So these are called construction documents.
So back in that dream phase or the schematic phase that we talk about, we help clients physically and visually bring together what these ideas are. So sometimes you'll have a client and they come to you and they don't necessarily understand the construction documents or the drawings that you have in front of you. So building physical models is one of the things that we also do to help clients and help us as designers figure out what we like and what makes sense for the space and for the city. Another thing that we do is we put together visuals for clients and for ourselves as well. We put together material palettes, renders, videos. This is almost like a video game. So this is another thing that you can get into being an architect. You can get into the more visual and graphic aspect of what an architect does and how we bring it to life and how we get people excited about the process and the designs.
Yeah, so like Tayvia was mentioning, because there's so many ways to express ideas, you might find as someone who is interested in the profession, that maybe you gravitate more towards the visual aspect of things and helping to conjure up something that's abstract and in your head to something that is a little more real through videos and graphics. So that there are architects who deal predominantly with this. But then there are also architects who deal predominantly with more technical aspects, and we can touch on those here later.
So as architects and designers and interior designers, what we do really get into the locations of appliances, applications. This here is a break room, and what the client really wanted is something neutral. The logo for the client was like a blue and a yellow, but he really wanted the break room to feel very calm for his clients. So what we do is we bring what the client's words and visions are, we bring it to life. So we create material palettes, we create renders, we create elevations and plans to make sure that the space makes sense and that it is useful, but also beautiful. Another thing we do is we problem solve. So this is a church, and the client asks us the church has a pantry, the church has a stair to get up to the youth space, and it has a worship space. So there's all these different elements, and the client really wanted to be able to walk into the space and see all of these elements and know where to go. So this is what you can start to do for clients. They bring you an issue that they have a space that's very closed off with walls, and they want to be able to see all these different spaces and know where to go. So this is what we start to do. We create color diagrams and renders to bring that to life. So this isn't necessarily exactly what it will look like with materiality, but this is to let the clients know that we understand what their issue is and this is how we're going to solve it.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about, what I do and what Tayvia does, and I hope we were able to show the variety of things that you can do, it's probably time to start talking about how might somebody who's interested in architecture begin to get into the profession to finally achieve, licensure or become a practicing architect, things like that.
So the more traditional route taken is getting familiar with architecture in high school and middle school. And then being an architect or designer stands out to you, don't be afraid to seek out family members, family friends, and professionals who are doing the things that you want to do. Even us, you can use us as a resource. But to get into high school and what you can do, some of the classes you can start to take are some art courses like drawing, painting, sculpting, music. Some of the science courses can include physics, biology, chemistry, earth science. And some of the technical courses like drafting, mechanics, woodshop, welding, and robotics.
What you'll see, and one of the things that we'll reiterate again is just even in high school and the types of classes that you take, how broad that is. It's because being an architect takes all these little pieces of information and knowledge applied then to something very specific, like a building or a piece of furniture or products. So in high school, if you get an opportunity to take these classes, it's a great way to get started. So following your time in high school, maybe the next traditional step is to pursue a degree at an accredited university. Because ultimately architecture is a profession with professionals. So there's a bit of work that has to go into it so that you're able to convey confidence to your clients and to people around you that you're capable of taking something very complex and making it real. So by pursuing a college education, you really open up those doors for yourself, and it gives you the opportunity to expand on the things that you were interested in high school, and then take that a step further. In university, you'll learn fundamentals of history, theory, structure, things like that, to really set the pace for your time afterwards. In Kansas City, we're in so close proximity to great architecture schools, like the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas State University in Manhattan, the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, the University of Colorado, Denver, Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Drury University, and the Universities of St. Louis, and Iowa State University. So quickly here you see just how many different schools there are, and that's actually a very good thing. It's never too early to start to really research and dig into like how these schools teach architecture, and you can start to ask questions to professors and see the type of course work that they offer. What's interesting about architecture school is that you get such a varied education, and each school will tackle that differently. So get familiar, ask questions, and then find a fit that works for you.
So forming relationships. Architecture is a profession of relationships, and in a figurative sense, you form relationships between spaces, materials, structure, but in the literal sense, you foster professional relationships with your colleagues and relationships with your professors. I think really what you want to get from this is that establishing relationship and connections can help you in the long run with getting jobs. So don't be afraid to research different firms that you find interesting, and knocking on the door and talking and saying, hey, can I follow a principal? Can I have a tour of your space? Can I get to know this space a little bit more, so that you're able to establish a connection, and we're more likely to help you. Like, we love to mentor and mentee, so this is just a great opportunity to form relationships and connections.
So during your time in university and even afterwards, you need to consider the different licensing requirements that are a part of being an architect. Think about lawyers and doctors. They have their own set of licensing requirements to practice what they do. Architects are just the same, and doing internships helps you get that experience, and it's one of the first steps in the licensure process, and it ultimately allows you to attain, if you're interested in architecture, it allows you to attain what's known as the architectural stamp and seal, and that's what allows you to practice in a legal sense your architecture profession. It allows you to stamp drawings for construction. So it's a big responsibility, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I'll go into detail, and like for architects, there's a very specific set of exams that you have to pass. The first one is called practice management, and it covers topics about running your own architectural practice. It also covers how to deal with clients, builders, and getting familiar with legal contracts. But then it also tests your knowledge of financial topics as you become a professional and provide services for your own business. Following that is an exam titled Project Management. And it's I'd say, it's a test that covers the complexities of actually building a project, putting a piece of architecture into reality. The exam covers, how a project and its disparate pieces are coordinated and managed, all the way from the sketch to those construction documents and then to the actual building. Following this exam is one titled Programming and Analysis, and it covers one of those very important parts about being an architect, and that's the problem-solving phase. So with programming and analysis, you're trying to figure out what types of spaces the client needs and things like that. So this test sort of covers procedures that you might practice to get to the root need of that client. You'll also cover things like city codes, different site conditions, and many other factors that impact how a project comes to life. Project planning and design is the next exam. It covers early design concepts, but it also tests your knowledge of sustainability practices. So it's a very much more technical. So you'll get into the nitty-gritty of that kind of stuff. Following that, you get this development and documentation exam, and it covers your ability to integrate civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical, plumbing, things of that sort that are things that people don't often think about as associated with architecture, but an architect has to be able to manage all that and document it accurately so that your building works as it should. Lastly, the very last exam, I know that it seems like a lot, but they're all very important. Construction and evaluation covers how you execute a contract that you've signed and all the legal ramifications of that as you take something that's on paper and that you've drawn into an actual piece of architecture. And you probably noticed at the bottom of the screen, your health bar got a little bit lower each exam, and that's because these are very time-consuming and they just require so much time and attention. And I would say that most people you ask after they finish these exams is that they feel so proud of all the hard work they do. So once you pass all these exams, your health replenishes and you become a licensed architect. So it's like I said, something to be very proud of, and it's one step in a very long journey of practicing architecture.
So as an architect, you can venture into many paths along your career. And one of those examples is me. And I've introduced myself as an interior designer because I have my master's in architecture and I went to school to be an architect. But once I got into the profession, I decided that interior design was more of an interest for me. So there's so many different paths you could take as an architect. And the way that looks is just, it can be anything. So as an architect, you can start in school, but then you could become an interior designer like me, or you could become a graphic designer. You could become a cinematographer, an exterior and landscape designer, a code analysis consultant, a magazine editor, building type consultant, material and furniture company rep, information technology, professor, or marketing business development, experiential designer, a furniture maker, a professor, a set designer, and a contractor.
So what we wanted to demonstrate to you is that architecture gives you the skill set to really make a career that best fits you. The broadness in an architectural education is what really excites people about it, because you might practice as an architect initially, but then you might find that your interests and your skills are aligned with something different, and that's totally okay. That's, I would consider maybe a very positive aspect of pursuing an education in architecture. So, covering those things, one common, I guess, response to an architecture education or being in this career is that there's things that we didn't know before that we know now that we think would be good to touch on. So
try as many career options as possible. Like we talked about before, there's so many different things that you can get into. So don't be afraid to pursue different camps or different summer camps or anything that can help you figure out what you want to do, because you have your whole life to kind of figure that out. You can choose one thing, you can always be something else. You're never stuck doing what you do. So know that there's always so many career options. So try them and figure it out. Figure out what you like, figure out who you are.
Secondly, it's okay to not have everything figured out. I think Tayvia's example is great because it shows, she took a leap of faith and pursued an education in architecture, but then found that her strengths fit something else, and that's totally okay. And for instance, I practice as an architect, but who's to say that I can't sort of mold my career into something else? So it's something that you have to be comfortable with. As just in general, it's a great message to recognize early on in your education and careers that it's okay to not know, and that you have to be comfortable with uncertainty, and that's a good motivating factor into being an adult.
So also apply for as many scholarships as possible. Try to research and apply for different scholarships, because one thing you can do is create connections with these scholarships. Once you win them, and you be surprised how many you win or how many you receive awards from, but you establish connections. So I was able to get a scholarship from the KCAF Foundation, which helped me be able to be in YAF and be able to present to you today. So getting into scholarships establishes connections. It helps you with financial reasons for school. And it's just a good way to kind of get yourself ready for the real world, in the sense of you'll be working hard and it's on you to figure out what you want to do and what you need to do. So go out and research scholarships. That can help you.
And lastly, that notion of establishing relationships is very important, regardless of what field you're interested in. For architects, it means getting to know different builders and different designers in your city, because one thing that makes design better is iteration and talking and getting different input and criticisms to make things better. So by establishing those relationships, you're only going to make your career and your own goals much more attainable, but also much more enriching. And it's one of the things, again, one of the things that I didn't know about going into this profession is how important it is to form relationships with just about anybody you come into contact with, because you never know what type of knowledge or the little tidbit of information that you need to know to be successful at whatever it is. So start early.
So you actually are doing that right now, listening to our presentation and being a part of AIA and seeing what's going on. So the more you do that, the more you're connected with people, and you can kind of start with us. So this is our information, and we both work at 2 different firms. It does 2 different things.
Mm-hmm.
We work on 2 different scales. So feel free to reach out and connect with us, get a tour of our firms, have a one-on-one with us to better understand if this is something you want to do, ask the questions that you want to ask. So just starting here, establishing relationships, you can do this anywhere, but this helps that you are listening to this presentation.
Yeah. Christina, if there's any questions, we can take those now, but I'd like to thank everyone for watching and paying attention. We appreciate it. And thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, of course. And thank you both for the fantastic presentation. As a reminder, if anyone has any questions, type them in the Q&A chat box. If you're on Facebook, type them in the comment section. I think a good way to start off this Q&A would be, could you guys both talk a little bit more about your experiences at your specific studios? Tayvia, you're at Multi-Studio. Jaasiel, you're at Hermanos Design. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Tayvia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so like I said before, I went to school as an architect and now I am here at Multi-Studio as interior designer. And what I do on a daily basis here is I did graduate in 2020, so I am still new to the profession, but I do a lot of client presentations. I do a lot of the rendering and graphics that we showed before. I also do work on CDs and getting into details and different things like that. But here at Multi-Studio, we really focus on higher education, churches. We do all types of things, but a little bit more on that bigger scale. So I've been able to touch quite a few things as I've been here. So you saw some churches, you saw some large residential apartment complexes. You've seen some schools. We do all types of things. So that's kind of what we do.
For me in particular, Hermanos Design it's a smaller firm, so there's only 6 of us, but we're also design build. So that's an aspect of architecture that we didn't touch on for this presentation, but it's think about that slide and that notion about you might start in architecture, but you'll take on maybe different roles. And for me in particular, design build means that I get to sort of put on the builder hat. And not only am I designing projects, but then with my team, we're sort of helping a client build it, which is a bit atypical. Mostly the architect and then the contractor or builder are 2 separate entities, but I get to sort of put on both of those hats. And I didn't know that would be a possibility as an architect. And it's again, because of the particular education that Tayvia and I had, like we're able to step into those shoes. So again, that's a little bit of what I do. It's smaller scale stuff, little cafes, restaurants, some residential apartments, just little things in the city.
All right, that's really exciting. I was wondering if either you guys could stop sharing the screen, or I could have my colleague click on view options and end the screen share. Oh, thank you. Awesome. And it looks like we've got lots of questions coming in. So Chloe asked, what is one of the main softwares you use?
I'll jump in quickly. So we use a lot of the Adobe Creative Suite projects, so Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. That's mostly for us as we put together presentations and diagrams and drawings. And then sort of tangent to that is we use a software called Revit, and that's how we get to, for lack of better terms, like make a model of the design in 3 dimensions, and we're able to produce plans, elevations, and then sections of our designs. So it's if you're not familiar with that one in particular, it might be nice to research what exactly that software can do.
Yeah, Chloe, that's a great question. I think me being here at a bigger firm, we have about 70 employees, and it just depends on what project team I'm on. So I have skills in Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, the Adobe Suite like Photoshop, Illustrator. We use a lot of rendering processes like Inkscape to create the video that we showed earlier. And there's just so much out there, but like we talked about those camps and those different things like that, they start to introduce you to those programs. And if you find firms that you're interested in, this is a good question to ask them, so you're able to YouTube and try to figure out the basic needs of some of those programs, because it really helps you establish and get into the career.
All right. And we've got a question from Elliot asking, are there internships available for high school students? I don't know if you guys have a response to that one.
I would say it depends. I actually, so when I was doing an internship during school, there also happened to be another intern who was a high schooler. So I think those opportunities are available. I'd say they're more common if you're in kind of that college level. But one thing, you never know until you ask. So get familiar with different firms and architecture studios that you're interested in, and ask the question, hey, I'm a high schooler, but I'd love to shadow. I'd love to step in every once in a while and sort of get to know what you do.
All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? One person asks, what colleges did you guys go to, and what did you like about it?
We both went to K-State.
Yeah.
In Manhattan. And what I really liked about it was when you experience college, it's so different than living at home and being in high school. So you get that sense of being on your own, and you get like a little view into what it's like to be an adult. And you have classes that you have to get to. You have to wake your own self up. You have to take care of your homework. You have to, I think what my favorite part was that it was just like, I kind of got to be on my own and be able to make what I want out of my life. So when you're at home, you kind of have to listen to your parents, you kind of have your own rules, but when you get to college, you're able to really go out there and kind of be yourself and find out who you are.
I might add one thing that I didn't know I would enjoy as much as I did was the different personalities in your peers and other students there with you. Getting to know people, seeing how they go about life, but then that also applies to professors. Every professor is so unique and interesting, and you start to, as you practice your architecture skills, like you'll pick up on little things, and it's really nice to get close with professors. So that's something I didn't know I would enjoy that much, but it's been nice.
Yeah, I really like building models too.
And building models.
That was my favorite part. So if you like Legos and you like building things, you're able to do a lot of that in school.
Okay. And Lauren says, thank you so much to the both of you. And another person's asking a little bit about high school. If we could scroll down just a little bit. Someone asks, how would you decide the right college? How do you weigh all the factors to decide?
So yeah, that's a great question, and I wish there was a simple answer. So a big part of it for me was proximity to home. Perhaps a financial aspect to it. It's everyone knows this. It's really expensive, so you want to find a place where you're going to get the support that you need, and part of that requires asking those questions. At least for me, had I not asked some very important questions about what it took to go to this school, things like that, I would have had a much harder time. So for me, it was kind of those two things, but then also understanding that for me, the school that I went to was a very good school, and that was important to me, that I if I'm gonna, for lack of better terms, pay this much money, I want to get a quality education. So I did a lot of research.
I think one of the things that you also want to know, what degree do you want to end up with? Do you want your master's? Some schools don't have a master's degree. Some schools aren't accredited.
That's
so
true.
There's different things that you want to research. You want to figure out what you want to do. So if you want to become a licensed architect, there's some schools that you can go to specifically that you're able to get what you need so you can take your license. And there's some schools that you can't, but you still get that education. So I went to K-State, but I also went to UMKC for 2 years. So that's how my program started out, 2 years at UMKC. So I was able to stay at home and get a little bit, get ready for college. And then when I went to K-State, I got to be out on my own. And so that was a 5-year master's program. And I ended up doing KCDC, which is Kansas City Design Center, at the very end of my year, my 5th year, which is getting into urban planning. So I think I really liked my approach because I was able to study so many different elements of design. So like we talked about figuring out what you want, I was able to see interior design, see urban planning, see all these different things before I graduated. So I knew kind of what I wanted to get into.
Right. So it's really just balancing your priorities, you know, the
Mhm.
cost, location. So that'll be really personal. And Lauren asked, does schooling involve a lot of late night cram sessions as stereotyped, or is that just situational?
I don't want to lie to anyone listening about architecture education. It is a very grueling and time-intensive, set of coursework, but there are healthy ways to approach it. There are certain habits that you can form that will make it so that when you do have to work for a very long time to keep it simple, it won't be as damaging to your health, your mental health, things like that. So it's actually very interesting that came up, because as a high school student, I didn't know that was part of my education. So it surprised me and it hit me like a train. So yeah, I'm impressed that this person knows
Right.
that it is a hard education. But one thing to remember, because architecture is something that everyone inhabits and is part of, it sort of makes sense why it's a very kind of grueling education. And I don't know, I don't want to like glorify the experience, but at least looking back, I still have good feelings about it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely very time, but it really just depends on you as a person. So I wanted to pride myself on I only had like one all-nighter because I was like very much like, oh no, I'm not doing this. I did not work well off of no sleep, so I can't do it. So it really depends on your personality and how you kind of approach. Because like I said, once you get into college, there's no one telling you when to do what. You're told your deadline and you have to figure out when to get it done and how you want to get that done. Mm-hmm. So you need to problem solve of like I'll do this in the morning and I'll do this after this class. So it's just really how you go about your day and how your personality is. If you're a last minute person, you might be stressed most of the time trying to get things done. But if you want to stay on top of it, you do. So it really just kind of depends on your personality and how you want to approach school. Like if you really want to get the good grades and you really want to do what you're supposed to do, you kind of take care of business. Mm-hmm. But also have fun.
Yeah,
have fun. And most of the late nights that I did have, you're with your other students and you're having a great time. We're listening to music. Mm-hmm. We're having people come over to our desk, looking at our work, giving us critiques. So it's really an experience. Even though it's tiresome, we're all going through it together. So it makes it more fun.
That's great advice. It's always important to enjoy yourself, even as you're working hard. Olivia asked, what do peers and employers look for in a portfolio? And what are good things to keep in mind?
Well, that'll depend on, one, the types of projects you want to do, the type of office that you're interested in being in. Some offices might gravitate and enjoy if you show more of a technical side and understanding of architecture. Some might enjoy the more creative aspects of it. Some, want to know that you are dependable, and then that, because like one thing to recognize is that this office will teach you how you best fit into this project type and things like that. So it sort of just depends, I would say. Mm-hmm.
I think I was lucky to have an internship here at my firm, and we were able to sit down with HR who looks at the portfolio. So usually, sometimes, depending on the firm, the architects don't necessarily look at the portfolios or get you that foot in the door. It's HR that kind of runs through and looks through things. So I think the biggest thing is to not have it too long, like have it attention grab. So like have things in there so they're like, oh, I need to learn more about this person. I want to know more about this project. I want them to come in. So have an attention grabber. So what I did was I had a portfolio that was pretty short and sweet. And then when I got the interview, I would have my full portfolio that was a lot longer. So I was able to kind of go into more depth. So you really want to, because it's a competition in a sense, right? You're trying to get a job over other peers. So you have to leave a little mystery to yourself to get people to want to bring you in, and be very critical about your work. You might do some work in first year that you want to redo and make look better for your portfolio. So never feel that you can't go back and redo something or make things better, because throughout your whole career, you're advancing. Like every year I learned something new in Photoshop. I learned something new to make my portfolio better. I try to make my portfolio updated every year because I'm learning so many things. And I think that's just really important. And then Jaasiel touched on like what you have in your portfolio. I think the approach that I took was that I put in my portfolio what I wanted them to know that I was good at. So I was good at diagramming. I was good at thinking about problem solving and thinking through different things. And I really wanted to showcase my talents, because it's really personal. Like, why am I hiring you specifically? And they know who they want to hire. So it's like, you don't want to get hired to do things that you don't want to do. So put things in your portfolio that you really like working on and you really want yourself to be out there as.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is a very personal, you're painting a picture of the type of person that you are and the type of designer that you are. So be honest, and be mindful of what you put out there, because it'll sort of fill in gaps that maybe you don't want people to fill in gaps, because you want them to know you for who you are. So it is an important thing to think critically about.
Yeah, that's great. You have to find your strengths and highlight that and push that forward. We have a couple questions now asking about salary. So, straight out of university or typical jobs, what does that salary range look like? And, they're saying they could be a ballpark average or something. So if you guys feel comfortable talking about what that looks like.
Numbers specifically, architecture, it's a profession where even after you graduate from university, there is so much to learn and so many things that you've yet to even learn about. It's crazy. Like, there's things that we don't know yet, and we've been out of school for 3 years. So I'm saying that only because it's a profession that just you build and build and build. So your salary will sort of start around just the ballpark, 50,000, 55, something like that.
Maybe I would say 40. I would say 40 to like 50 is probably what you'll get into. And it really just depends on what region you go into. So in the Midwest, I think 40 to 50 is kind of the sweet spot. If you go to California and those other places that like it costs more to live, the price will go up, obviously. Yeah. So it really just depends on where you're planning to work. And I think that's important too about picking your school. If you usually pick your school where you kind of want to work, right? Because you'll establish those relationships with professors and in that city. So if you're saying, oh, I really would love to live in California, maybe start to look at schools out there, because that's where you can start to establish your connections. But yeah, range-wise, it's going to just depend on where you want to work. But the Midwest, it's 40 to 50, I would say.
Yeah, and I know that no matter what, that will vary widely, as you guys said, based on location and also based on what your goals are and what branch you're going out into. Let's see, we've got several more questions. If we could scroll up more. Okay, we've got a question from Francisco. Thank you so much for this great lecture. Question, since time management is crucial for architects, what are some bad shortcuts that you guys have seen in your field? So is there a bad shortcut in terms of time management?
Bad shortcut.
A bad shortcut. Ooh, you mind if I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think so if I understand the question correctly, a bad shortcut, I would say for time management is maybe not being very specific. You know, you might think that in my planner or in my notes, if I make a general goal that I'm working towards, I think, you know, maybe that's a time thing. You might just be writing like, finish this, or, you know, do this before this. I feel like that's a bad shortcut because, yeah, you might be saving time and notation so that you can move on to your next thing, but you're losing sight of like every little thing that takes to get to that final goal. I hope that is a good answer for the question, if I understood it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because especially once you get out in the real world, like we're on a committee right now, but we also work and we also have significant others, and you have to be able to balance your life in a sense of like you said, get a little bit more specific. Say, hey, my Mondays are just for my family. So, and to be able to say that to your job and say that to your committees and let them know what your schedule is and kind of be very, take hold of it. Another bad shortcut I think would just be waiting till the last minute or just like, not, because when you present something to someone or when you're talking with someone, it's a reflection on you, right? So you wouldn't want to wait till the last minute to put something together. So say I have a client, they would like me to put some stuff together. I waited 2 days and now I'm cranking and getting a whole bunch of random stuff out, and they're looking at, it's just you in the room and with the client, and they're kind of looking like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? So you really have to make sure that you leave enough time, extra time. Like even if you say, oh, this will probably take me an hour, add another hour just in case, because you never know.
Yeah.
So just really be mindful of your time and your space for yourself, for your own sanity, and for others as well, because time is money in this.
Absolutely. So how can someone join the American Institute of Architects Kansas City, and what are the benefits of being part of AIA-KC?
So joining AIA Kansas City, it's as simple as signing up. There are dues associated with it that are due each year. Those are pretty manageable. And one thing to note is that a lot of firms will cover those fees for you as a professional to participate in AIA. I'd say the benefits of it, maybe the most important one is a chance to form relationships. I mean, Tayvia and I went to school together and we formed a relationship there, but now because we're part of AIA together, we're able to sort of expand on that. So they also provide a bunch of professional support as you go through your licensure and exams and little things like that.
Yeah, I think it's good practice for your career as well. As like we're presenting to you now, but we present to clients on a daily basis. It gives us a practice, a run of like putting myself in, because I'm nervous around, I don't like standing in front of crowds, talking and different things like that. So I think being an AIA has put me in situations where I'm able to better myself, even though I'm nervous, even though I am feeling all these different things. It's putting me in a situation to better myself by doing them over and over again, because you're never going to get good at anything until you've practiced and kind of put yourself out there and done it. So I think I've benefited from that, the relationships. Yes, and it's nice to walk into a party, an architecture party, and know some people there instead of being like, okay, I know no one. Yeah. So it's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, being a part of a network is very important. We have a couple questions that are similar in tone. They're asking what is your favorite part of work, or what you enjoy, and then least favorite or the most difficult part of your job.
Well, my favorite part is because my job's in Westport, so I get to go eat lunch with all my colleagues in all these nice places. But I really like the graphic aspect of my job. Like I really like putting together client presentations, diagrams. I really like the breakdown of how to show somebody something. So like we told someone before, our client had an issue And we solve this issue visually. And I really love putting together things like that to break things down to make them understand.
Yeah.
Because it's helped me a lot in my life, because it's like, if you imagine, sometimes when I read a book, I have to go back, take notes, I have to go back and kind of break it down. And I really love that aspect of the profession of breaking things down so that it makes sense to the client or makes sense to people that you're talking to on your team.
Yeah, I'd say that's maybe my point that I value the most about it, that excites me the most, is getting some abstract thing or idea that a client brings to the table, and then through your skills, whether it's artistic or it's analytical or planning, you're able to make it come to life. And there's something really special about that. And I never knew that I would value it as much as I do now. And it's through that education that I was able to sort of find it, you know? So yeah, I think, you know, there's graphics involved, there's drawings, there's sketching, there's model building. The crafty side of things is the most exciting. But then I think the other part of the conversation was what do I not like? What do we not like the most? And I have a hard time saying that I don't like it, because I know that it's an important part, but like sort of the coordination of it all, it can get very complex sometimes. And one thing that you realize is that, you know, you might have this notion of an architect as working alone. And there's a reason that that's not true, because it's so complex that you really depend on your team to make it all come together. So, you know, if you're in a situation where you're alone, it can be very stressful, very, you'll just sort of fumble on things because it's almost impossible for one person to do everything. So that, I mean, and it happens, but, you know, like I said, you start to realize that when you're working together, you can make it happen. So that's important to know.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest parts of being in this career will be, like Jaasiel said, just juggling, first off, the communication of everything, but juggling, sometimes you're on 4 or 5 projects at the same time. So you're like having to catch up on these emails of this project. You're kind of balancing a lot of different things, and you have to really, personally, you have to sit down and say, I'm only working on this project for this much. Like, you have to take control of your situation. Your project managers who are project managers on other projects, they can't sit here and tell you exactly what to do and when to do it. You have to kind of take that on yourself and be like, oh, this deadline is here. Kind of like we talked about with the time management. You really have to lay out your week. This is what's due this is what's due here. This is what I need to work on this time. Like, you really have to kind of take control, because if not, you're kind of just like, I'm overwhelmed. I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's what school teaches you. And I think that's why school is so stressful for students in the beginning, because we've never been in a situation where we had to juggle so many different classes, so many different deadlines, so many different tests. All these things are coming at you and you're just like, oh my gosh. So it's really getting you prepared for the real world, because that's really how it is.
All right, we've got another question. What if I like the creative side of things, but not so much the technical math area? Are there still possibilities for this type of person?
Yeah, that's definitely like me. I'm more on that end. So I really love the visual, creative, graphic side of it. And you will do some of the other, like any other profession, or especially if you're working at a smaller firm, you're having to do things that you don't want to do. Or do things that are not as interesting to you, but you need to learn these things. So you can be a creative person, but if you don't know how the details come together and how all of those things come together, you're not a really good creative person, right? So you're creating things that can't be made or can't be designed. So you have to know a little bit of both sides. I prefer the creative side, but you also need the technical side to be able to create things that make sense, that work, that stand up, so people don't die, or people don't, like, you know, you have to make things work. So yeah, there's definitely room for you, but just know that you are going to have to do some of those things that you don't want to do. And you can keep it at a minimum, but you need that in the back of your head to be able to be a great creative.
I'll add briefly here. I think I think if you have this idea of what it is that you like, I would sort of challenge you to keep an open mind, because until you do it, you won't really know where you fit in. And when you're put in a difficult situation and maybe it's not what's interesting to you, you'll sort of, I don't know, I feel like you learn a lot in those situations, and then you can take that knowledge, even if you didn't like it, and make your interests and expand upon those. So I'd keep an open mind, but yeah, there's definitely a place, like Tayvia was saying, like if you want to stick to the more creative side of things, like that's natural and normal, and there's space for that. So,
All
and
right.
if you're a more technical person, so.
And you don't like to draw, there's plenty of people who don't want anything to do with any of that. They want to stick to the construction documents. They like to talk with the consultants and everybody like that. So there's a place for everybody.
Yeah, I think no matter where you are, you're going to have to dabble in some things that aren't your favorite, but great advice. We've got another question. Despite maybe being in different areas or fields, are you guys more of an in-office worker or out and about type of worker, maybe both?
When you say out and about, like maybe clarify, maybe I'm taking out and about as in remote, or is it more of like being on site?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think maybe it could mean both of those things. So are you guys working remotely? Are you going to different sites, or do you have a typical office that you always come into? What does your day-to-day look like?
So I'll jump in here first. So to answer it from the different aspects, I work mostly in the office, but because my firm is small, but we're also design build, I do get the opportunity to step out of the office, go to project sites, talk with builders and contractors, solve problems there, but then always coming back to the office, drawing things to clarify, taking the drawings, showing them. So it's an opportunity that is available if that's what's interesting to you, or if you want to. I also have the opportunity, if I wanted to, just to stay in the office. I don't want to go to project sites. That can always be handled by somebody who's maybe more comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, I think it kind of also depends on where you're at in your career, because I find it very beneficial to be in the office just because I don't know everything yet, and I ask my colleagues or my project manager questions, and it's easier to sit with my project manager and him sketch something and we figure it out than for me to be online. So our profession, you do work better in person, but there is some days where I am working from home because my pet needs to go to the vet, and there's things I need to take care of. So it also just depends on where you work. So I have the benefits of working at a job where as long as you get your work done, you can work from home 2 days out of the week, and you can kind of do what you need to do. You just got to get your work done is really the most important. And the out of office thing as well, it also depends on so my firm here, we also do, once a project is completed, we'll do kind of like a field trip where everyone will go on look. They also take a lot of the younger staff and we'll go walk around a construction site and learn about different things. There's different programs within the firm that help us learn and get in and out of the office as we please, but it really just depends on where you work. So Jaasiel being at a smaller firm, he's put in those positions to be able to be there. But in my firm being a little bit bigger, they know that we're not able to get some of those opportunities. So there are programs and there's project managers who are kind of taking over and say, hey, I want to take this group out and show them this detail. It didn't work, so I want to show them. So it just kind of depends on where you work and kind of how you're able to approach those things.
Right. So if you have any preferences, definitely check into the place that you're applying to before jumping headfirst in. So because of time, we'll make this be the final question. Elliot asks, what's the project that you've enjoyed the most or are the most proud of?
So for me, again, I work at a smaller firm, and our projects have maybe faster deadlines than a bigger firm. So I've actually had an opportunity to see some of the projects I've worked on come to fruition. One of those I would say the Mildred's coffee shops, if anyone's familiar with, my firm got to work on, and fortunately for me, I was interning, but then I was hired full-time, so I was able to see the project from the idea then to construction. And it's always nice to hear someone say like, oh, I really liked Mildred's, or I really liked, the space. So it's a good feeling, and you'll find that, that feeling alone is a really good motivator.
Yeah, one of my, I work at a bigger firm, so the deadlines are a lot. So I haven't, I'm on a project that started when I graduated high school. So it's like, there's some projects that go on for like 10 years, 5 years. But as an intern, I was able to work out a detail. So Garney Construction, it's a construction facility, and we designed their office space. And as an intern, I was able to detail out these booths that were made out of these large, 10-foot pipes.
Wow.
And we made like little meeting spaces. So I kind of detailed out how the table goes, because it's a curve, it's a round pipe. So you're gonna have your benches on the side, you have your table kind of like floating from the top. So I got to design that as an intern. And then when I started working here, I saw professional photos of it. And I'm like, hey, I designed, I came up with this idea. So I think that's been my favorite so far. It's been kind of one of my first things that I've been able to see in real life and see people use on a daily basis.
Wow, that would be so gratifying to see all of that come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Tayvia and Jaasiel, so much for the amazing presentation and for taking the time to answer everyone's questions. And we had a lot of questions, so thanks everyone for tuning in and engaging. For more information about the Linda Hall Library and all of our upcoming events and programs, follow us on all of our social media accounts and visit our website at lindahall.org, where I also encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter. And for the parents and teachers tuning in today, I hope that you consider supporting the library through the Linda Hall Library Foundation. Your contributions make all of our programs possible and freely available. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.